Okay, perfect. We're fucking doing it, bro.
All right,
oh my
awesome.
god. So before we get into like whatever the stuff that we kind of talked about briefly, I just want to catch up because you're saying so you're going back to I haven't seen you in a minute, and then we haven't had to have like a long conversation like this too. So it's just good to catch up. So you're going to Ireland in June?
Going to Ireland end of June. So actually, funny enough, right when the year ends for
Yeah.
M and I, which is June 26th for me, June 27th for her. We're leaving.
School year,
We're,
right?
Yeah, we're leaving that night, June 27th.
The night
So,
that the school year
The
ends.
night of, yep. So
That's not too hectic in terms of like planning, like running around.
No, because you know what it is. The way the school year ends, always like from a teacher side.
Yeah.
It's almost like the opposite of a student, where the student is working up and they take those final exams, and that's probably like the most intense part of the year.
Yeah.
And then it just ends. Teachers, it's the opposite. You know, you really invest the first couple weeks of June getting the kids ready for exams, and then once exam week starts,
You did your
you're
job.
just proctoring and grading at that point, so it's very like low stakes. So it's like a very nice, slow, relaxing way to end the year. But yeah, we're gonna be going to Ireland. We will be flying into Shannon Airport, and then spending some time with. No, it's all good. Spending some time with their family up in Sligo, which is northwest of Ireland. Not quite like Northern Ireland, but of what is actually Ireland. It would be the northwestern part. So
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned an interesting point because I know you've been to Sligo before, right? That's where you were actually on the podcast. Not the last time. Maybe it was the last time, or the episode before that.
Yeah, it was
but
the
you
episode
were
before that,
breaking
yeah.
down like your
The
trip to
trip,
Ireland. Yeah. How close are you to the border at that point in Sligo?
I don't. It's not that close. I would say it's probably a couple hours.
Okay.
Now if you look at it on a map, like it's definitely much closer to that, you know, Northern Ireland Irish border than it is to, you know, the southern part of, you know, of the island. But it's not. I wouldn't say that it's close to the border. Like I wouldn't say like the people that live there, but it has gotten a lot closer in terms of just improving the roads and the highways. So it's made driving a lot easier, which I feel like I kind of got gypped out the last time because I remember as a kid always hearing about Ireland's all dirt roads, and some of them still are, but like how just difficult it was from like driving from place to place. But like the nice part is that even on these major well, they weren't highway, but these major roads, like you're still driving through like these little towns, so it was like super scenic. Now it's the N17. There's actually a really good song about it, and it's basically like an I-95.
It's an I-95
Yeah.
that basically connects all like the whole island.
The west, I think it's primarily the west coast of Ireland. I don't know if it does like a dip towards the east once you go north, but it's mainly in the west.
Can you do me a
the west
favor?
side. Yeah,
Can you just
absolutely.
tighten the fuck out of that? I'm
Yep.
so sorry.
No,
This
you're good.
thing is annoying the shit out of me. It's
No,
like
you're good.
sagging down as you're talking. I think that's good.
Yep. All right, there we go.
Way better. Okay,
Awesome.
perfect. So N17 is that new construction? New construction?
It's
Or not really?
newer. Like I think when we went there, her, I don't know if it was her sister, her dad, that was like, oh wow, like a lot of this is like brand spanking new, and that was in 2022, and I think the times I went before were in like the early 2010s.
So it's been an ongoing but like major infrastructure project.
Yes,
basically.
yes,
Okay.
because
Okay.
but you could still see like there's like that's the new country, but the old country still exists.
Like the dirt roads that you're talking about.
dirt roads. Like we went to church on Sunday mass, and then we walked. It's funny. It was Easter. We go to church. Pretty much, basically the whole town's there. It was just beautiful, like typical Irish town and Irish church. And as I'm walking out, I just see everyone is making like these sharp, like left 90-degree turns, like walking out of the church. So I'm kind of looking. I'm like, all right, like it's pretty weird because if I remember correctly, like the parking lot was on the other side, but everyone's just making a sharp left, sharp left, sharp left. You want to know the reason why?
I don't want to be stereotypical here,
You
but
could be
was there a pub?
There was a
to
pub
the
right.
left?
There was
Okay.
a pub right next to. There was a pub right next to the church, and there was a big Gaelic football match between Sligo and New York. Actually, the New York team. Like there's a Gaelic football team.
Like
that plays out of
actually New York, not a place in Ireland called
They're-
New York?
No. They play out of New York, but it's mainly guys that
Irish?
lived over there and that now live here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Irish New Yorkers.
Irish immigrants, that
Yeah,
live in
yeah,
New York. So
yeah.
like all the guys that live in, Woodside, Woodlawn, Maybe there's a couple guys from Prover, but they're the entire town's in the bar watching it, and obviously
That's pretty fucking cool.
I'm rooting for New York. I had like my Yankee hat on.
You were definitely the only motherfucker in there rooting for New
Yeah,
York.
not even Emma. And Emma, I'm like, you got to be rooting for New York. She's like, no, we're in Ireland, we're in Sligo. I got to root for them.
But
I'm
she's
like, hell
from
no.
New York.
So
I
there was
like,
one point where it was like a tense moment. And New York scores, and I'm starting to like after watching the game, a couple times. I'm like, all right, like I understand the rules to an extent, and they score, and I'm couple drinks in, I'm like, let's go.
fuck. Oh no.
Exactly like that. Like
okay.
I probably elbowed the guy behind me, and next thing you know, like everyone just turns around, but very cool.
They were just looking at you like
raised the glass, like just couple guys like bought me a drink. They're like, oh, that's so cool. You're from New York, coming over here. Like, who are you visiting? Then you say a name, and they know exactly who you're talking about. They know the family. So it's a exactly what you would expect an Irish town to be.
It's a small town though, right? Like relatively
So small.
Is it smaller than this town?
Oh my God, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I would say there's probably only like a couple thousand people that live there, and like their town is maybe like what would be like a half of a New York City block.
Are you serious?
You have a little grocery store. You have the pub. Then there's a restaurant, the church. There's a little elementary school where like the local kids go, and that's it.
I think vacationing, like having trips to go to places like that is really like, it's really underrated. I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about traveling abroad and like having these experiences, I think the general urge for like Americans is to go to Europe, like these fucking just beaten like a dead horse, like Paris. Everyone wants to go to fucking Paris. I'm like, what? To get robbed and smell like fuck by a...
Yeah, you ever see the scams over there in Paris?
Oh, you talking about like street scams?
The
Like
street
they'll
scams,
fucking
yeah.
give you something and then say it's free. Oh, no, you're so beautiful. It's for you, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll take it and then you'll walk and then they'll come up to you like, hey, you just took that. Like,
where's the
the
tip?
money?
Yeah, where's the tip?
You owe me a tip, and the tip is really the fee for you stealing it or whatever the fuck. And they threaten the cops or on you or something. But multiple scams or schemes like that, right?
Yeah, and then there's also Guess the Ball, where it's like it's like
Guess
the
the
regular,
Ball.
it's the kids game where you have like the three cups, like cups that look like this.
Yeah.
Flip them over, you put the ball in there.
Yeah.
And these guys are pros.
Sleight of hand.
So they have really good sleight of hand. They'll be doing it, and what people don't realize is within that group, you'll see a group of like 8 or 9 people, and of the 8 or 9 people that are watching and that are trying to guess, there will be 4 or 5 of them that are in on it. So what they do is these guys are smart and they're very aware. They realize when someone is walking close and that they have some sort of interest, and then they eventually they draw a crowd because they're very loud, they're clapping, and what they'll do is they'll have someone lose, and then that same person will then bet the next game, and then they'll win, and then they'll exchange a ton of money. So people will see them and be like, wow, like that guy just won bunch of money. Like,
And
this
then
seems
like,
like
I
a
could do
fair
this. It's
game.
a
Like, he
fucking-
lost, he
it's-
won. Like, all
yeah.
right, like this, I could get the hang of this. Obviously, he did, but they don't know is that guy is also in on it too.
Oh shit.
So they'll do the same thing, and they rob people left and right. And there's probably about, like, I would say in a given day, anywhere from like 30 to 100 people within this group that are set up all around the perimeter of the Eiffel Tower.
I have heard that those popular touristy places, they're riddled with pickpockets, scams, anything to kind of get fast money or like sussy money. It's always in those super tourist trappy places, like in Barcelona too, or Barcelona, whatever the fuck.
Buff.
I know, but isn't there like there's a famous cathedral? I'm pretty sure in Barcelona, right? I'm pretty sure.
Man,
I mean,
I
all over
would
Europe.
think so. I would think so. There's a famous cathedral everywhere.
Yeah, there's
in
famous
Europe.
cathedrals all over Europe. But I think in Barcelona, there's like one that's like pretty historic. I haven't been there, so like I don't know. I haven't been to Spain, but from what I've seen online, there's like this area, like kind of like what you're saying, like a square around this like cathedral, I think. And in that area, it's just fucking like all the tourist videos are like people telling you, make sure you wear your fanny pack under your shirt, blah blah blah, in the front of you. You don't put your shit to the side, nothing in an open pocket without a zipper, because there are just experts that you will not think, they just look like a grandma or something, and when you pass them, bink, they just take, like, without you even knowing. Which I never really got that, because like, how do you not feel someone rifling through your pocket? But then again,
Cell phones. I think a pickpocketer's favorite invention was probably the cell
The
phone.
cell phone.
Like you don't realize it, but when you're walking on a crowded street and you're walking past people, I would say over half the people are on their phone texting or just looking at their phone scrolling. It's crazy. And even driving, I see it where I'll be on the road and because someone will start swerving. It's like, all right, they're either drunk or they're on their phone. But it's like, oh, it's 7:30 going to work. They're probably not drunk. And sure enough, like I've seen guys like literally watching like Joe Rogan. I've seen
Jesus
guys like scrolling on Instagram, like looking at reels. It's insane. But I would say, yeah, like I would think that I would notice. But
hard.
then I guess it all depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I have a poor tendency sometimes of like just being really deep into thought, and especially if there's this beautiful cathedral that you've seen for the first time, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been hyped up, and that's probably what you're looking forward to. Like the thing that's probably in the back of your head is like, oh, like as I'm looking at this and taking pictures of my family members, like there's someone behind me that's like taking.
And you have
out
to
my
be
phone, my
consciously
wallet.
aware of like
Yeah.
the feel here in like your back area or whatever.
But I don't know. Growing up in New York and going into the city every once in a while, and like I think that we're probably a little bit more like accustomed to like just being aware of our surroundings, whereas like you get Billy Bob from the Midwest.
He's fucked.
Like
He's fucked.
No.
Especially because like the way you deal with problems is real different. How Billy Bob.
Billy
Like,
Bob's
we're-
not gonna have his little Billy Bob with him.
Exactly. like Billy Bob's used to doing some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like if something pops off, something's gonna pop off. Something else is gonna pop off from Billy Bob's hand. But with us, like New Yorkers, it's not really. At least you and I, we're not fucking criminals. Like we're not having illegal guns and shit like that. Like, and on top of that, your dad is also a former police officer, retired police officer. So he has just obviously like that comes with the territory of that job. You have to have street smarts. You have to be aware. So he definitely instilled that in you and your siblings for sure. I mean, I know
Oh my
that
God,
because
yeah.
I see
We'll
it.
never forget the famous story of, hey, someone broke into my car for a box of tissues. So he's like, if people break into your car for a box of tissues, he's like, they'll break into your car for anything.
Did that actually happen?
What I think happened was the guy broke into his car and didn't really see much, and maybe it was a cold night and was like, oh, you know what, I probably need a couple tissues, and took the box.
Not
I don't
specifically.
think the motive was like, man, that Kleenex box is looking pretty nice. Top isn't even ripped off. Like I'm gonna go out and like grab it. Like
Still got the fucking cardboard.
Yeah, like
fucking,
I don't
like,
think
piece.
you're right. Like I don't think that was his motive, but
Yeah.
obviously I guess just to scare your young children.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
story was
That's a good
always
story.
relayed. So,
I mean, I definitely you have a good point because like I don't know because if I saw a box of tissues with like Vicks infused in it, I might break a car open for that motherfucker.
Hey,
like those lotion infused ones.
That's right. And allergy season is on the way.
Is right
so
around
you
the corner.
Might never know. I might have to hide my box of tissues
Yeah,
around you.
bro, it's fucking crazy. You know what's funny about that is like I think my dad's car got broken into Philly, like a couple blocks from Fishtown, for like they took cash because. Okay, funny enough, it was on or near the block of the. Somehow we had fucking security footage of this. I think it was. I want to say it was actually in front of Julian's house. So like for whatever reasons, one of the security cameras got either in the house or out, like had a view of a window or whatever. But it was slightly in frame. Like the very top of the car was at like the bottom of the frame of the video, and you could see the guy walk past to the car, like his head, because it's like from the second floor, and the car's obviously on the first floor. So, and it's kind of like this angle, so you could see the top of the car, and then the guy walked by, but then he walks back, and he walks back again, and then he's like, no one's near this car. So he breaks into my dad's car, and it ends up he takes money, because you could see, and it was like $25. So he just fucking broke into the car for $25. Yeah. So like, yeah, like what your dad was saying is a fair point. Also, another thing, would you ever walk around in public with a wad of cash, $500 in your hand,
Absolutely not.
just walking around like this?
Absolutely not. I hate ATM machines. Like even if I'm at a bowling alley or at the barbershop, I don't like having the idea of me taking money out and having my back towards everyone. So anytime I take money out of an ATM machine, which is not often, but I always like open up and I'm just looking back and forth. Because at the end of the day, people are preying on others that are unaware and are just living in their own world. So if they see that you're looking back and forth, like they'll get spooked out, they'll walk away. But yeah, walking with, but that's the problem is like some people grow up in very comfortable environments. That's not a problem. That's a great thing.
It is a disservice to that person.
Unfortunately, they believe that most people are, or everyone is inherently good, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone has good intentions. So that's why you have to get roughed up a couple times.
You have
just
to have your guard up, for sure.
Yeah, just to have your guard up and to be as safe as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And like the point that I was trying to say with that $500, like you walking around with that, if you wouldn't walk around with $500 out just like in your hand, walking in the street, just holding it, you're doing that with your phone, but it's $1,000. And like,
Yeah, that's yeah.
and
good
when you're
point.
holding it, you don't hold your phone like you don't fucking squeeze the
Oh,
death out.
it's so easy to do.
It's just like
Click it right out.
the most gentle touch. So, and I've seen how many videos online, and you've seen this too, of like fucking people on mopeds.
Oh,
This
yep.
is popular in Latin America.
Yep.
Like in
DR.
Colombia, this happens all the
DR.
time. And yeah,
I
DR.
saw a clip of the
Just
DR.
you be driving, and then there's just somebody like on their phone, and while they're passing by, bink, just rip it out of your hand because you're not holding it, and then that thing is gone.
Oh, yeah, it's done.
And the worst part, if you leave that bitch, if you're on it, it's unlocked, and someone snags that out of your hand. Unless by the grace of God that bitch got locked in the process of it getting yanked out of your hand, all of your personal information
Exactly.
is now in the hands of that fucking
Exactly.
stranger.
Yeah, it's scary.
It's
But
scary.
Phones actually are a hot topic now. I know that there is new legislation that is being floated around
About what?
that New York State schools will be equipped with funding and the resources needed to ban phones in public schools.
What is that? Okay.
So this is
What
coming
is
from the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. So just with research, data, anecdotal observations, conversations with educators, administrators, there's widespread consent that a lot of the academic issues is stemming from cell phones.
In what ways? That they use them to cheat so they're not actually learning?
Yeah,
that
so
it's distracting?
I'll give you like a really good example. So taught at two schools. One school has a very strict cell phone policy where at the beginning of the day, students come in and the first thing they have to do is hand over their cell phone. So the vast majority of students, now there are ways where they'll have a dummy phone, right? And they'll hand it in. But most students don't have the cell phone. And then I've worked at schools where that is not as strict or it's not even enforced at all. And students are coming in with their cell phone, but then the expectation is that they're not using it during classes. Now, what I've seen, and I'm a firm believer, is that attention spans, even within the last 5-6 years, has dwindled to the point where now when I'm teaching or just having a conversation with a student, it has to be to the point very quickly, and I have to bring the energy each time and make it as interesting as possible. Because I know if that does not happen and that isn't met,
They're just
and just start they lose. And not all kids, but or the other issue is kids coming in like absolutely just wrecked, exhausted. Where there's like us tired where it's like, oh, I'm tired, but you're still able to function. It's the tired where it's like you could barely even lift up your head without falling asleep every 2-3 seconds. And I would say 95% of the time it's I was on my phone till like 2:30, 3
Doom
o'clock.
scrolling.
Yeah, scrolling.
Oh, how old are they? Just out of curiosity, how are they? Like, I know it's anecdotal, and this isn't like a fucking. I mean, it's anecdotal, yes, but it is valuable information, right? And this is actually, it's funny that the conversation made its way here, but this is why I texted Tom because I'm like, I want to talk to you about this stuff because you're a teacher. That is an essential job. You are literally like the responsibility on your head, and all teachers in this country is more, and around the world is more than like it's very, very glossed over. But the responsibility on you and teachers around the world is way more important than people assign like credit to. Meaning, like, basically, long story short, the bottom line is that you are essentially, teachers have a huge part to play in raising the literal people that are going to be in charge of this shit one day. Like, one day, you and I won't be here, but our fucking kids and our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids will. And who's the people that are educating all these people? It's teachers. So if you got fucking teachers in here and they have points, things that they like, you need to value their opinion is what I'm trying to say, right? So that's why I wanted to ask you about this, because obviously right now in America we're in like a very frantic time. There's a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of like change that's happening in this country from a policy perspective, for many different perspectives. But like you as a teacher, you bring in this anecdotal evidence. It's super valuable. But the question I had, this is all to preface this, right? Because I'm glad that we're having this conversation, getting into this. What is the age range of these kids that you're seeing afflicted by this kind of like attention? Like
It's all ages.
all ages?
Certainly all ages. I think the older students have become better at understanding the harm and understanding the value of having a person-to-person conversation. Of like, hey, I might have access to AI and ChatGPT, and there are appropriate uses for that. And I tell them that. I'm like, listen, I use it. I pay $20 a month for it. Like, there are appropriate uses, but there is value in the actual sweating it out process and the difficulty of learning, trial and error. Like, because that's life. Not everything is you could look up and figure it out just by being on your phone. And that's even still like what I would consider in the bubble of like positive uses. There are so many harmful things online, whether it's misinformation, just videos that probably should not be published or should not be seen by a minor or a child, because most kids are probably getting their first smartphone and have like full complete access to the internet, I would say, at like 11, 12 years old. And like those are probably the kids that are most at risk, just because they don't really understand the harm of it yet. And even if they were told like, oh, this could be really harmful and you have to watch out for the dangers of the internet, and your brain is still developing, it has a lot of negative effects with your prefrontal cortex and memory, and attention span. Like any 11 or 12-year-old kid, like we would have at that age would have been like, yeah, whatever. Okay, well, this is more fun. It's more fun looking up, people getting their fingers blown up or going on TikTok and watching God knows what we call like just absolute brain rot.
Yeah.
But I think like there are once students get older, it's like, hey, you know what? Like this probably isn't the best thing. And I think that
The self-awareness is more
where I
there with them?
work. There's a really great community, and understanding that like, hey, like kids are coming in without their cell phones and they're functioning for 7 straight hours and they're playing instruments and they're having conversations. And I definitely see the changes from like freshman year to the seniors, of like freshmen is still trying to like sneak in their phone and that's all they're thinking about all day. And then now like once they get older, they're like, wait a second, like I could unplug for 6-7 hours, and then there's nothing wrong with using your phone or going on your phone. I think there are certainly benefits, but that's not going to dictate what I do on a daily basis or dictate my life. Em and I just actually went to, for those that are watching, my fiance Emma, we went to the eye doctor about 3 weeks ago. And it was strange because I remember going to the eye doctor, getting like checkups every once in a while, and most of the people there were elderly folks. We went there, and I would say like 75% of the people were like families, like bringing their like young children. And I'm not saying like people have worn glasses since the dawn of day or since the glasses were invented. Like people have had vision issues. But I noticed there's a lot more children. And Emma asked, like, have you seen the negative, harmful effects of the phone or tablets or screens play out? And he's like, absolutely. There was a study that was done. I forget the exact vision issue, but it's a result of watching your screen way too close. And when you watch something on a screen, your peripheral vision is supposed to be just like normal background, right? The problem is now is that kids are watching things so closely, so the entire screen takes up their peripheral vision. And he said, I think by the year 2030 or 2035, I'd have to look up the exact study, that 50% of children ages 11, 12, 13, 14 will need glasses or some sort of like eye repair.
That makes sense. But okay, so I actually know a little bit about this. Just
Oh, you do?
a
Yeah.
little bit about this. And the issue is not so much though that okay. The reason I know about this is because when I was a kid, I obviously, I'm like a digital, I love like tech and like I like video games. So like I'm screen usage is high for me is what I'm trying to say. And it was when I was a kid. I love playing video games. And like my mom would always tell me that, you're gonna like ruin your eyes because like you're just watching too much of
back
whatever
away from
screen
the
it was.
TV. Oh, yeah, I
with the
remember
TV,
that.
but
Yep.
now it's the phone, right?
Yep.
And like I think the original school of thought was that the light emitted from whatever object you're using, whether it be your phone or a TV or a tablet, was harmful for your eyes. That's what the original claim was. But it's actually not that. The reason why a lot of kids nowadays are having these issues is not because they're on their phone, but but it's not the way through the mechanism in which you think. So it's not looking at the phone is bad. It's that only looking at the phone and not going outside, having your eyes exposed to like sunlight, and then also focusing on different things at different distances. So like if you look at that poster right there versus this right here, everything's in focus when you look at it.
Right.
But that's that's your eyes adjusting to whatever you're looking at. If you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're constantly, as you're like in your formative years where you're developing, like from a biological standpoint, like what you said, everything is here. You don't go outside. You don't have any time where you're like, look at that tree, look at that bird. Oh, you squint your eyes. Oh, there it is. And then like it focuses, that muscle doesn't get worked. And if that muscle doesn't get worked, your eyes suffer from it. So that's why a lot of kids are having like nearsightedness issues nowadays,
Right.
which kind of, it makes sense. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that is the only reason. It's definitely a multi-layered issue. I'm not a fucking ophthalmologist, so I don't know. No, optometrist? What's an eye doctor? Ophthalmologist or optometrist? Oh shit.
You see, I haven't been to one in a while.
I should know this because my fucking fat ass head wears glasses every day. Eye doctor is called oh my god.
Were you way off? You could say anything, and I would have rolled with it.
So optometrists and ophthalmologists are both healthcare professionals who specialize in eye care, but have different training scopes of practice and roles in healthcare system. Whatever. So
Whatever.
they're the
Yeah.
same
Whatever.
shit.
Okay. There you are.
Whatever
Okay,
that
all right.
means.
So you were both right.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, but long story short, that is supposed to be, or supposedly, the reason why a lot of kids are having like nearsightedness is because of the lack of like sunlight exposure and basically focusing on different objects at different varying distances. That ends up long term having a really negative effect on your eye development. So that is I think that is based off of multiple studies that were done in like the 2000, I want to say the 2010s. I might be completely like wrong on that, but I know that is like.
I mean,
what
it
they
would
found.
make sense because obviously you wouldn't be able to have that study earlier on, and I think probably during the earlier stages, like we were unsure of like what the effects might be. I mean, the scary part is we have yet to even see the long-term effects of cell phones, especially iPhones. I mean, iPhones, I would say most people started rocking an iPhone in like 2015, 2016,
Yeah,
if then. Like I still watch like old footage, like one from like our Disney trip in 2015, and I'm recording with the iPhone, but you still see a decent number of people in the background like recording with like the
Camcorders. Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, I'm like that was 10 years ago. I'm like, I don't like at the time, I just figured everyone had an iPhone, but there, obviously that is now gone. I think what's really important is the role of parents, which I would say that in the last 10 years or so, like parents have certainly dropped the ball. Not all, but as a society, if children, the first thing they learn is to use their hands and to be creative and to have conversations and to just use their imagination as much as possible and to read books and to write books and to color and to draw and to play outside. And if that's all they know for the first 15 years of their life, well, then when you eventually give them that cell phone, they'll be like, all right, like this is cool, but you've already developed your passions and your likes and your wants and desires doing all those other things.
Yeah.
If you introduce the cell phone at a young age or any sort of a tablet, that is what they get their joy and their pleasure out of. And then that is what I would imagine that they're probably going to shape like their adulthood wants, desires, and sometimes even needs just based off of that.
That makes total sense.
I don't, and that's just again all anecdotal, but I think and that's going back to like what Governor Hochul did. Like I know people are governor shouldn't get involved in school, and I definitely understand like the angle. I just think that it is a major health epidemic that we are unaware of, that we need to address. And not saying that your kid can't have a cell phone or can't bring it to school, but it's just going to be limited, which is a great thing because we're definitely behind the the 8 ball in terms of learning in the world.
Yeah, what were we ranked last? We were ranked last, but highest in
Yeah, I think amongst
money
like
spent per pupil.
right, like amongst I don't know, I would say developed countries, so that would probably encompass most of Western Europe,
There's like 40 countries were on that
U.S.,
list, right?
Canada, right? You know, Japan, South Korea. Like I would definitely think our education system is a little bit behind for a number of reasons, but it needs to be fixed. And
I want to talk about this actually. So, so back to the whole. There's so many different ways we could go about this, but like you were talking about earlier, I want to stay zeroed in on this like topic of cell phone usage with kids because it's super fucking fascinating, right? Because like, I feel like cell phone usage, the internet, all of these things in the digital realm is for the modern day generation presents the dangers that like what is it called, like locky kids, what are those, like okay, let me backtrack.
yeah,
You know how there's old heads that'll be like, back in my day, like, well, you could just leave, like, go out the fucking front door, and our parents wouldn't know where we were.
Right.
There was no trackers on us, and we'd come back home. If little Timmy didn't come back home, some shit went wrong. Oh, now we got to get the cops involved. But, like,
get them on a milk carton. That's
Yeah,
why they had
exactly.
It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
Exactly. Okay,
So
so
little Timmy didn't have his cell phone.
all those kids had to, like, kind of basically, like, manage the troubles, the potential dangers, the pitfalls of, like, living life in that way, like leaving your house physically, and you have to be aware, like stranger danger, look out, have good awareness, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff, the dangers are now kind of more hidden. They're more passive because it's the internet. So there's not a physical present danger in front of you, right? But there are pitfalls and dangers like you were just talking about through heavy cell phone usage. Maybe you see some shit at a young age where you shouldn't be seeing that yet, like pornography and like, that's just even the tip of the surface. Like, honestly, gory things online, like on Instagram.
But even on X or X, formerly Twitter, I mean, just recently the other day, I was scrolling through a sports feed, and as I'm scrolling, I was like, "Whoa, what the heck was that?" And it was like nudity, and I'm like, I really have to be careful because I'm like, what I think or what I intend to be using that app for and looking at sports or politics or anything, like all of a sudden, like that'll just randomly pop
just
up.
appear in your algorithm,
Or, well, I wouldn't say my algorithm.
Oh, not your algorithm. Your Discover page. Your Discover page.
Or just on like underneath the replies.
Yeah.
It'll be like, oh, LeBron like drains a three, his fourth three of the night.
There's
like,
be some OnlyFans model.
Right.
Like, check my page out.
Right.
And
like,
then they just respond.
He's so wet. You know who else is wet? And then it'll be a picture.
Lord.
Like, it's really, really terrible and just gruesome. But yeah, like we're not even intending to like interact with those people or that type of content, and sometimes it's just there.
You can
in
speak
the
for
face.
yourself. You can speak for yourself. I don't know. My ex is pretty fucking dirty. No, I'm fucking around, but like, I'll tell you this much right now, dude. The amount of body parts, dead body, like violence that I've seen online in the last 3 to 4 years is crazy. I could not imagine being 11, 12, 13 years old and seeing some of the shit that I have seen online. So what I was trying to say, like, the way that your parents taught you back in the day, stranger danger, don't just get into any random fucking person's car. If someone offers you candy, don't accept it. Like, be aware of your surroundings. Stay with your friends. Don't split up. Like, shit like that. Just common sense stuff, right? That was taught to us by our parents. So that's why now that we can navigate the physical world, we have a little bit of like a safety row because we have these like safety measures in place. When are modern day parents talking to you about the potential pitfalls of internet usage, cell phone usage, whatever? No one's doing that. They're just giving their kid a device because they're like, little Timmy's not fucking stopping crying. And like, I kind of get it though. Cause like if you're a parent, especially a new parent, your kid is young, they won't shut up. But the only thing that gets them to shut up is this goddamn iPad and he's playing Roblox. You give it to him to buy yourself some peace. But long term, what does that look like? Now he loves his iPad. Right. And when he gets older and he's able to fucking use it better, he gets on the internet. What does he see? I mean, that's not in your control unless you're tech savvy, right? So the dangers of like that, I can't remember what they're called, Lockheed kids. There was like a term for it. What is it?
It rings a bell, but
I can't remember what
I'm
it's
not
like kids of like the 80s and 90s that like you were allowed to leave the house and you had a key to your own house. Like you could just go meet up with your friends and then come back. Whatever that term for that type of person was, like the dangers that they're that they're given preface on and that they're like kind of warned about prior to heading out. There's nothing like that for the internet nowadays, but that danger is still there. So I feel like that danger is this generation of parents' version of that danger is the internet. That's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And what I find really interesting too is I think there should be some sort of legislation done that a child, let's take an 18-year-old that might just be in service in the military.
Mm-hmm.
They are prevented from walking into a bar because their brain is not developed. They might make poor choices in the eyes of the government, and therefore they should be excluded from bars. It should be an older crowd. But yet we're allowing our 8, 9, 10-year-old children to go on any sort of website without there being some sort of limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that being done for a place that serves alcohol, right? For an 8, let's use the oldest age for a 20-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have minors that might not have the parental guidance that we had growing up or that other people are afforded with. And they're allowed to go on these harmful websites without there being any sort of limitation. Like, to me, that always seemed very crazy. And I think like we eventually will start to shift towards that, because
it's so hard.
And I understand like government intervention with certain freedoms can be frowned upon, but I just think when we're talking about our children,
mm-hmm.
it is a completely
different story,
higher
topic. Standards. Yeah,
correct.
I get that, but the thing is like, the issue with having, because like the only real thing that really matters at that point is age, but age is tied into like your identity, right? Like that you can't lie about your age if you give, like if you're not going to be able to lie about your age, that means you have to give something that proves you are the age that you are, which is likely tied into your identification, which means there's no more internet anonymity. I can't say that word. Anonymity. I can't say that word. You get what I'm saying? You can't be anonymous on the internet now. So I think that presents like a lot of issues, because like people like to shitpost, like, and I feel like there is a lot of like, I don't fucking put all my information out there. Like,
of course.
just being like, oh, this is where, like on Facebook, this is where I live. This is like my fucking house, like all this shit. Some people use that and they don't think like, oh, this could potentially be dangerous. But they have all their shit out there.
But the social media companies are the ones that are funding politicians that are multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the money in the politics. If there is ever legislation that would be brought out limiting the use of cell phone use of a child, or limiting the use of, let's say, X or Facebook, Instagram, like, and I'm not saying those are harmful for, like, those are probably not even the most harmful apps, but obviously they're not going to be supporting legislation that might reduce the number of users, that might cut it in half or cut it by a third. Then that's less people looking at ads. That's less money that's being brought in.
Less revenue, yeah.
Right. So exactly, less revenue. So it's a complex issue. But I think you could put pressure on the Verizon's, AT&T's, T-Mobile's. Like, hey, listen, like when your son or daughter, minor, is purchasing a phone, the adult has to be there, and then that phone is going to be registered as a minor. And I would think that most parents would support that if they are then told, like, hey, the reason why this is being done is to protect your child from harmful content. Like, I think it would be very hard pressed to find a parent that would hear that, or that solution, and say, oh, no, like, I want my son to be exposed to that. Like, I think most parents and most people are supportive of protecting our younger children.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one idea, but I really do believe that we will go towards, and I think trends are showing like there is going to be more government intervention or political intervention
with cell phone usage in minors.
Limiting it. So again, politics, everything always reverts back to politics. So I
mean, if I was a politician and I was like, and I really cared about this topic, what I would do instead of being a politician and try to attack it from like the policy level, I would literally, what talks in America is money. And if I was fucking trying to, like, if I cared about this issue a lot, I should, but I'm not a dad, so like, you know, it's hard to care about so many things, but it's a valid issue. I would fucking open up a company that specializes in making phones that are hard coded to not allow access to certain like there's certain applications, right? So if Apple makes an iPhone for minors specifically, how much money? Because it's not like the kids are fucking buying it themselves. They don't have money. It's the parents that are buying it for them, right?
Right.
And if your parents are buying you a phone, that means they have the money to buy you a phone. So why not just make a fucking phone that is specifically for kids? And if I was like a private company CEO, like I would make it either the same price or maybe even more expensive. This is kind of evil, but than the normal phone. Because that, like, it's kind of like the way of like, the way I would compare it is like, who the fuck doesn't think that plastics are good for you? Like ingesting plastic. Now there's all this talk about BPAs and like microplastics being in your system. And like I probably have billions of particles in my nutsack right now that I'm not aware of, right? Like this is a very hot topic right now. And now you see this huge emergence of this like brand new industry where everything's hyper natural, like fucking wool, cotton sheets for your baby. And like, I mean, if you ask Sandra about this, she'll know all about this. Cause like, they want to make sure their kids are healthy.
Shout out, Sandra.
Yeah, shout out, Sandra. You're an excellent mother. And Andy, you're an excellent father. So, like, they're going to spend all this time, research and investment, like, in investing in their kids' safety, the health route. If you take that same model and apply it to the phone thing, you know how much money you could fucking make? Like, even from a purely evil, like, or not evil, but from a purely non-angelic perspective, like, intention is to make money, which is not the purest of intentions. But even from that perspective alone, making something like a minor-only phone that is hard-coded to avoid access to certain apps, whatever you deem as dangerous, I feel like you can make a lot of fucking money with that. And it would be accomplishing the same goal that you're talking about, right?
I think through user settings, can't you limit?
Yeah, there's parental controls.
Yeah, there are parental controls, right.
But the problem is like kids are going to be evolving faster than the parents are. That's the issue. And like, it's very like, in order to do that, that's assuming that the parent is tech savvy and is able or willing. There's a lot of shitty parents out there, unfortunately, to do all that and put those guardrails in place. But if you're just a person who like sells the damn thing, you don't have to do shit. You just pay me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I also think too that like the stigma, if your child shows up to middle school or high school with that, they might get bullied. And unfortunately, I think parents are hesitant to make their child a target. Oh, they have a different phone or they don't have a cell phone at all, and they bend the knee to their kids. But I think it's the point where parents have to stand up to their children and actually have to.
Yeah, but I didn't even think about it from the social perspective. Yeah. Like the dynamics of like getting you see, that's why you have that, because you're in that world. You see that shit play out like on a daily fucking basis. I didn't even think about getting bullied. Yeah, that would not work actually, because I could definitely see kids being dicks about that.
I think having the conversation is the start.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's funny. I teach a class called Advisor. It's just with the freshmen. It's getting them accustomed to high school, yada yada yada. But one part that I really do like about the courses and the curriculum that the teacher designed is, we have an entire unit about cell phone usage. And it's not just like the usual school conversation of, oh, cyberbullying, it's bad, right? Like we do cover that, but then we also get a little bit deeper. We did a 6-week project where students were asked randomly, like, all right, everyone, next thing you have to do when you get your phone is screenshot your screen time, like your average screen time last week, and then upload it to the Google Classroom. So what I did was I made it anonymous because I didn't want anyone to be shamed, but I just did a little like scatter plot of all the screen times in a black marker.
Yeah.
So that was week 1. Week 2, I'm like, all right, we're doing it in blue, and we had a lesson like right after that about harmful uses, everything that we just explained, and I'm like, all right, let's see if you guys can actually curb your addiction and not be on your cell phone as much. Then you see like a significant drop, right? Week 2.
Okay.
So I think on average, take a guess on average, by the way, week 1. What do you think the average
Use
daily usage hours. Mind you,
daily usage.
let's say on average a kid gets 8 hours of sleep. So they are awake for 16 hours.
So out
of those 16 hours,
I mean, you're going to school for fucking like how long is school? It's 9
about
to or
6
7
hours.
to 3. What?
Yeah, about well, a little more than 6
It's
hours.
not like 8.
No, that was
Our
was
shit was like
yeah.
8.
We had the longest school day in New York State.
Wait,
so it's
that's
maybe
not
a little bit more.
normal?
I would say 7 hours. With
Hold on, wait.
after
That's
school.
not normal. I
No,
didn't think
no.
I thought that all schools had the same fucking amount of time that you had to be at school.
No,
I knew
there's-
that different schools
there's-
had different start
There was
times.
a requirement, but you could actually go underneath that requirement. You just wouldn't receive state funding.
Oh, and this is like a whole other conversation that opens up. But okay, so to stay on topic, I would guess if you have 16 hours in the day and
16 hours your week, and let's just chalk it up to about 9 of them you're not in school. Right, so 9 hours.
out of 9 hours in the
school.
day, you're not in fucking school. How am I would be shocked if those kids are like, oh my God. If it's over 4 hours, that's like bad.
Double it, 8 hours. 8 hours was the average. About 8, roughly. Yeah, little average. There was some that were
8
10.
hours
There were
of
some
phone usage out of 9 hours of the fucking day that you have free?
8 hours. 8 hours. So I was like, okay. I'm like, but this is a start.
That's a full-time job,
right.
dog.
But I liked getting those numbers from the standpoint. I'm like, all right, there's gonna be progress made. Like,
Yeah,
you-
yeah.
you can't
You're
really
starting
go up.
at bottom.
You can't really
You're
go
starting
up.
at
And-
bottom,
and it's
yeah.
the way I did my scale. I messed up. I put like 9 at the top because I'm like, they're not exceeding 9. And I'm like getting these numbers back. I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, they're exceeding 9, so I had to adjust it a bit. Week number 2, I believe it was at like 7. So not
2-hour drop is fucking substantial.
yeah, it was like more like it was. I think it was like 58 minutes. So I'm like, okay, obviously, like and I take that as
Your shit's working.
no, my shit's kind of working, but I take it more as like, all right, maybe 1 or 2 kids listen to me, maybe they were just busier this week, but my message did not really come across that well, or I did a poor job of really explaining and having that conversation about what's and how it's harmful. So that was more of like I used that data as like personal reflection because I was expecting like, all right, like we had a great lesson, we had a great conversation, students pledged using it every once in a while, not just and not like our rule was you can't wake up using it and you can't go to sleep using it. So meaning like you can't use your phone at all in bed. Mm-hmm. Okay. Week number 3, it stayed 7. The last 3 weeks went down. I want to say like 5, went down 4, and then it actually, I think the final week it stayed, I think right around like 4. So, but like from the beginning, it went from all the way 8, and then eventually dropped down.
You cut
to,
it
like,
down in half.
In half, right?
That's good.
So, but it took like it took a lot of like patience and having like really open and honest conversations about it. We watched a couple like TED Ed videos, mentioned how it could be linked with like depression. And that's another big one, especially at the high school level, is you go on social media and it's always, oh, look what such and such is doing. And social media is nonsense because it's just the best.
It's the highlight reels of your life.
Exactly. It's the best highlights of someone's life.
Yeah.
So obviously you're going to think like, oh, everyone's living this great life. And here I am, like, I'm sitting here on a Thursday, it's raining, and
I'm not doing
I'm just
shit.
on my phone, just scrolling. So it was nice. And still, like, I still have like those students. I did it last year and this year. So I still have students that are now sophomores that are like, oh, mister, like, you know, I've really have been like limiting my phone, and it's great. Like I've been reading longer texts. But I told them like, this is entirely like, this is all you guys. You guys are the ones steering the ship.
Yeah.
Like I'm just giving you the information. I heard this information. Do as you please with it. I won't think anything differently if you continue to use your phone, because you might be using it for very good reasons, and I don't want to prevent you from doing that. Like another thing the big adjustment was, I had a student the first year that was like, did it and didn't really get much out of it. It seemed like, just from like the numbers. And then I asked him like, oh, you know, I'm just wondering like what apps are you using? Like just out of curiosity, and keep using them. I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. The guy, Mr. Like, I don't have computer access at home, so I use that as my computer. I was like, oh, I completely understood. I'm like, you know what? I should have asked before. So that was the adjustment I made was, hey, is there anyone that doesn't have computer access at home? Because if not, like during the 6 weeks, like I'll make sure like you have a computer, and hopefully after the 6 weeks as well, like continue using that computer instead of the phone. And not to say the computer is much better, but I think if you're doing a homework assignment, you're probably less likely to be distracted on the computer than you would on your phone.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I would agree with that for sure. Especially if the computer is, did you say like potentially school provided?
It's school provided, so there are certain.
Yeah, so they're definitely not.
There are certain websites that would be blocked.
Yeah, they're blocked behind like some sort of firewall, and also like it's not your personal device. So if the kid is half fucking smart, they'll realize that whatever you're typing in that goddamn search bar on that Chromebook, there's records of it. Okay?
Exactly. Yep.
So you looking up big booty Latinas, that ain't fucking getting under the radar, buddy. Like that shit's there, and like if they're smart about it, they're not gonna use the laptop for that.
So it was a fun little activity. So
that's super cool, dude.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
And I did it myself too. And I
wait, that wasn't like a that wasn't like a like no one like the principal didn't tell you have to conduct this 6 week long thing.
No, so we're given like topics to discuss, and what I love about just the school culture and just the way that this class is ran is we're treated like experts of education, which is nice for a change. Like, hey, this is what you guys should address. However you want to do it, that's entirely up to you, because the needs of your students might be very different than the needs of other students, and some other students might resonate better with conversations. Others might resonate more with reading or writing or journaling, right? And like self-reflection. So it'll...
You mentioned you worked at 2 schools now, right?
Right.
This last one, is this the one that doesn't allow cell phone?
Yeah, the one that I'm currently employed at, we don't use cell
Okay, so
cell phones.
that's the one. Okay.
Yes.
This is now making sense because of the way that the culture at this school that you're working at now does seem, from a outside perspective, much more like productive and like conducive to like a better educational environment than
absolutely
the first one.
Terrific educational environment.
Is it private or public school?
Public school.
It's a public school.
New York City. I believe most New York City public schools do confiscate cell phones. So like if that policy is enacted, a large chunk of the state is already enacting this. It's which region of New York State do you think it is done the least?
The least is probably suburbs, I would guess, right?
The parental involvement and you know, if that is enacted in a public school, that's gonna get ripped apart, thrown out, and done and over with in a couple days.
This could be extremely like minimizing the different variables that could be at play here. But I would bet the reason that is because like in the city, you have like the parents of those kids are probably working. So they don't have time to fucking invest all, like they're worried about, I don't want to say real life issues, but like they're worried about like paying, like getting the bills paid,
right,
providing for their children, showing up in ways that are higher on their priority list than caring about like, oh, I heard that this policy was changed. Versus in the suburbs, you have a higher ratio of maybe stay-at-home parents, and then those parents are going to go to those fucking meetings, and they have nothing better to do than just give the fucking board the most amount of shit. Right. I don't like that's how you get the fucking parents that you're also a coach. I bet that there are kids or parents that go up to you telling you, how come my son hasn't played? Well, it's because your son is fucking ass at basketball. How about you go home? Okay, let me give you some homework. Assign 10 foul shots per night, and then we'll fucking talk about putting him in the starting squad. Because he's a bench warmer all the way. I know that because that was me. And when my dad would never get caught dead going up to somebody being like, why isn't my son playing? He knows why. He fucking called me pussyfoot in front of the whole class. Like, dog, I swear, parents nowadays, they're funny. Like, I'm not saying...
Well, but you're right. Like, I think it's human nature to be like, we like, everyone loves solving a problem.
Yeah.
Like, and it could be the smallest issue. It could be the largest issue. So when you have a more comfortable life and it's like, there's not really any problems around. Well, you got to create the problems, and then you have to be the one to solve it and play hero ball, as I like to say. But I definitely think there is
play what hero ball.
Hero ball, yeah.
That's
hero. There's a little coaching analogy. Hero ball, yeah. Is when one person just decides that they're gonna save everyone else.
Bro, you have the best, like, I cannot tell you how many like Tomisms, like phrases, like, you know, one that I use to this day. Like, I used it, I'm not joking, within this week. And I don't remember hearing it from anyone except for you. The first time I heard this shit, and you're gonna laugh, you're gonna think like, that's so stupid, but it is stuck in my brain, and I can't. It's my favorite shit. Whenever some bullshit happens, like some just non-honorable way of some party getting a victory over some other party, you're just like, that's a fucking Mickey Mouse win. The Mickey Mouse dub.
That was the Lakers COVID ring was considered a Mickey Mouse ring. It originated because they played in the Orlando bubble.
Yeah,
I can't, at Walt Disney World, so now it's Mickey Mouse. Yeah, that was always, it's funny, and like students will occasionally throw that out there, like, oh, this is a Mickey Mouse lesson, or they sometimes use it in their own context, and I'm like,
should I
correct them? I'm like, no, I don't want to, because then I might seem a little bit younger than I actually am. But that's another funny thing too. It's like just working in a school is they have zero concept for age, and they're 16, 17, and or just years.
What do you mean? Like,
okay, I'll give you an example. So we were doing a lesson the other day, or we made mention of the September 11, 2001 attacks. And
oh my God, most of those kids weren't even alive.
No, all those kids weren't even alive. They were
16, yeah.
Yeah, 2001. They were born in 2008, 2009, 2007. Shit. Yeah, so they were like they're first, like they barely even remember the Obama presidency.
Okay, no. That's going too far. That's going too far. No. There's no way that could be true. Like 16? That they were born in what? 09 then. Yeah. 09 because it's 2025. Right. And he was president in 08 to he was president from 08 to
about 2016 to early 2017.
So that would be 7. I don't remember shit from when I was 7 either.
Right. Do you remember like George Bush's first term?
Not his first term.
I don't remember his first term.
I just remember second term because obviously 9/11. Like I remember seeing.
Well, that was his first term. September 11th was his first term.
Oh, okay. So I do remember his first term. And because I remember, Clinton was in the late 90s, yeah. So I remember seeing on the TV his face, and I was just like, "Who is that?" And they'd be like, "That's the president." I'm like, I don't know who that is, but okay,
right?
Like because you're young. But then, so I do remember a little bit about it, but without 9/11, I don't think I would remember him. So it makes sense that they don't remember Obama.
And they only know like social media Obama. They know him through tweets. Through watching him on like Jimmy Kimmel or on YouTube. Kids don't watch Jimmy Kimmel. No one does. But like this, so that's. I was like, wait a second. I'm like,
no one does. Except for that one, like, couple people in LA.
Yeah, late night.
His production
late night
team.
TV is just
his production team is not what it was.
And I love Jimmy Kimmel. I love Jimmy Fallon. This is a side tangent. Conan O'Brien, I loved all those guys. David Letterman.
I loved all those guys too until Jimmy Fallon fucked it for me because of like the fake laugh and like
he's
I don't like
a little much.
Yeah. You know who now I've gone a fonder appreciation. He's by no means like is this guy like if you go back and look at some of his interviews, especially like the more PC crowd today will be like that is sexist as fuck. You remember Craig Ferguson?
Oh, of course he was on after David Letterman.
That Scottish ass motherfucker was hilarious.
But he could get away with it because he has a Scottish accent. The accent kind of makes it a little more charming.
Like somebody would be like some dime piece of an actress would be like obviously like on set like live in the studio whatever, and he'd be talking and maybe they're wearing something a little bit like. I don't want to say revealing, but maybe it just has a little bit of tasteful, low-cut top, right? Like tasteful, nothing crazy. Yeah. But he would be like, oh, the fucking, like he'll just say some shit in like that accent. I'm not even gonna. It won't do it justice. I'm not gonna try.
That was pretty good. I thought that was pretty good.
No, but he's just good, man. I don't know.
So I'm sorry. So
continue. I'm so sorry.
No. Exactly. The cell phone use that. Me too.
Exactly.
But I thought that was a good little side tangent. Yeah. But so back to.
Go ahead. Keep
back
talking.
to
ignore it like it's not happening.
Back to what we were saying about
September.
Yeah. And then September 11th, right? So my students will ask me like, oh, like where were you during it? And I'm like, do I really want them to spend the next 5 minutes doing math? I'm like, oh, like he was how old and this was how many years ago? So this makes I just prefer they don't know my age, right? That was good advice. I'll get to that. So. I told him, I was in school, and actually, I do remember it. We were 3. You actually were not 3 at the time. You were 2. I was 3. It was actually one of my first memories, believe it or not. And I tell him, like, I remember, like, seeing it on TV and people being really stressed out. I remember my mother at the time was very stressed out because the phones were down, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. And your dad's a police officer.
Yeah, they're like, oh, like, did you leave school early, because like I'm sure like high school must have been a lot different afterwards.
They said high. Who said high school?
Most of the kids. They
Most of
assume,
the kids?
right? And like I'll be playing like Biggie, Tupac, or like any '90s music, and they're like, "Oh, Mister, this is like probably stuff you listen to, like when you were in school." I'm like, little do they know, I'm like, I was listening to Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar,
Yeah.
Drake, like literally.
You know the
same,
motherfucker that just won the Grammys, like that you're caring about.
The guy
They're
who
not
just
like us. Like yeah,
exactly.
okay.
The guy who was just Super Bowl performing. Yeah, like they don't understand that.
They
Like,
have, whoa.
they just have like warped concepts of like of time. So back to, I know you made a facial expression. I was like, I don't like them knowing my age. I think good advice that I was given is that let them think that you're older than you actually are.
Is it a respect thing?
It is 100% a respect thing.
So they really will be not, I don't want to say disrespectful, but they won't show you as much outward expression.
Well, it's
respect.
just like this guy's cool. Like he's the same age as my brother. Like, all right, like he's my teacher, but he's young. He's just like us. He understands us. He gets us. And that sometimes will breed complacency or maybe not the most appropriate behaviors. So I was told that advice. I'll never forget. It was actually a professor I had at St. Thomas Aquinas. Because I did my first year. My first year, I was like, oh, yeah, graduated college 3 years ago. And they're like, oh, mister, you're only 24. Like, you're not that much older than us. And some kids will still respect you, and other kids will see that as an opportunity. Be like, oh, like,
this guy's a fucking nobody.
Right, he's a
fucking
nobody. He's young.
guy.
He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a
Yeah.
newbie. Right, you always want to kind of present the idea like, oh, like
You're an expert.
I've been doing it.
Yeah,
I've been doing it
that
for
you're
a while.
teacher that's
and-
been
Yes.
seasoned.
Yeah, so, but I will occasionally make references like certain things, then they'll kind of do the math a bit. But like Harambe, you remember Harambe?
Yeah,
in
yeah.
2016. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I was a senior in high school, and they're like, oh, senior in high school, and they do the math. But
But
now
they know about Harambe?
right, like they know, yeah, they know.
How the fuck they know about Harambe?
Because cell phones, man. That's exactly
Because of
what
meme
I'm.
culture.
This is meme culture.
What?
I'm
the
telling you, yeah.
fuck? Everything is so distorted. I don't remember what year Harambe was. I know.
2016.
See,
It
when you
was-
said that, I did not remember.
it
That was freshman
April-
year of college.
Yeah, it was April, May of 2016.
So that's
No, we were still in high school,
high
yeah.
school because
Yep.
we were just about to graduate. So that's senior year of high school. I could not tell you when that was. I just know that I was around when everyone was talking about a fucking gorilla that was shot.
You don't remember 2016 was like one of the most groundbreaking years, like pre-COVID. We thought that year was gonna be like so groundbreaking. Prince died, David Bowie died. That's when Brexit happened. Trump getting elected for the first term. Like Chicago Cubs winning the World Series. That was when LeBron came back 3-1.
Your sense of time. Okay, see, this is why like
the Warrior. Yeah.
no, your sense of time is crazy. I think you're right. Your kids, like the student's sense of time is shit, obviously, but I also think that it's amplified because your memory, you're half elephant. I don't know what the fuck's going on with you. You
but I
have like a crazy
like
memory.
the worst things. I would love to know. I still haven't made the connection as to like what things do I actually remember, and what things do I not remember. But useless things. I think that's probably the biggest correlation between everything. Is just like useless bits of tidbits of information.
I think it's useless in isolation, but when you go back and say something like, okay, you knowing that Harambe was 2016 is pretty fucking useless. But when you then go and say, yeah, it was Harambe was 2016. So was when Trump was elected and when they won this and when this happened and when that happened. And, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't remember shit from 2016 except for me graduating high school, going into fucking college and being like, oh my God, no one knows me here for the first time. I could just like, I guess, be myself, like whatever. That's all I remember from 2016. I do remember Trump being elected then because that was like,
Oh, I mean, listen. Regardless of what angle you want to, like, that was
historic.
That was historic.
Yeah.
Whether you disagree and you hate him, historic. Whether you love him, don't like middle ground. Doesn't like it was historic.
Yeah.
Like anti-establishment candidate, and even just like the way it happened, like losing the popular vote by like 3 million, and like all the protests that happened afterwards. I remember living through 2016, be like, oh my God, like the world is gonna end. Like there's just so much tension and chaos, and things are changing so rapidly and quickly. And then we start college. I'm like, wow, like things are crazy. And then 4 years later, like
You thought that was great.
Exactly. Oh, here's a sequel, and we're gonna intensify it 100 times.
Bro, that's crazy.
But the pre-COVID, like kind of pre-COVID memories. I don't know for you, like I struggle to like remember like, all right, 2017, 2018, 2019, like pre-COVID, 2020. Like for me, it's just all blur. And then you blink, and the next thing you know, it was like 2023, 2024. And it's like, where did all the time go?
Well, you have a good ability to like remember, tie it into years. I don't remember it by years. I remember like phases. So I remember like the Lucy phase, like when I was dating her. I remember, I guess, well, the single phase after her. And then I remember also the single phase like pre Lucy, because she was my first real girlfriend. I remember, it's not good that like all of it's tied into, I guess, like my relationship status, but I remember me
people,
before
yeah,
then.
that makes sense. People that you're often communicating with, and you
They have an impact
yeah,
on you for
impact.
sure.
Of course.
Yeah. So
They
I guess it
absolutely
does make
do.
sense. But that's how I remember stuff, not in years. But back to the original point that we were talking about before with like them not maybe, I don't want to say respecting you as much, but like you choosing to keep your age discreet, right? That's a conscious choice you're making. So in a way, is it more useful as a teacher to be like just straight up respected and not like you don't give a fuck about being the cool teacher is basically what I'm trying to say, right?
No, I aspire to make positive connections with them and to connect with them outside of like the classroom and in, like,
That's a
an
good
appropriate
teacher,
way.
but you don't care about being the cool.
No, like I won't do the thing that they see. Oh, that's funny or that's cool.
Ah.
But if it's not the right thing to do, like you have to treat them like an adult.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that'll garner more respectful and more fruitful, like parent, like teacher student, relationships, right? Like that to me is like the teachers that I always think about. That are like, oh, they were great teachers. Like they held themselves to a certain standard. They were super respectful. They genuinely cared about what I was doing outside the classroom, and like I felt like they were not talking down to me, and that we were actually having like an adult conversation. You want like I never liked the teachers that like they were way too energetic one day, and then the next day they would be all mad and pissy, and just never really seemed authentic, right? Like
I
it seemed like
totally
they were
see what you're
trying to like
saying.
put on a show, right? Or like I didn't really connect well with those teachers. More of like teachers that are like, all right, like you guys are young adults, I'm going to treat you like that, and until you prove otherwise, like I'm going to continue to to treat you like a young adult, and I think that's how it should be. And I think a problem with just schools now is that you don't have that, and kids are being babied for a number of reasons. Not entirely all on the teachers or all on the kids or all on the parents or administrators. It's kind of a collective effort. But like even just looking or watching like old interviews of student interviews from 1970s, 1980s, like occasionally it'll pop up on social media. And even the way that people spoke back then, it was like with a certain confidence, and if you just close your eyes and didn't even see the face, like you would think like, oh, this person's probably an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've lost that, or maybe it's just that though the way that they spoke in the 1970s and 1980s, those people now are adults. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe they were seen as speaking youthful,
Then
given in that time period, in that context. But now they're the older folks in society, and maybe they didn't really change the way they spoke. And so I don't know if it's that illusion, but yeah, I think just trying to be the adult in the room and set that example for the students, and eventually like most of them will follow along.
I think that's definitely the best way to go about it. Because now that you're saying that, like I'm thinking back on like our high school experience, and probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite teacher, was very much in that way. Like Mullane was always.
Oh, he was so authentic. That's
Yeah.
Like that's what made him so special.
Have you gone back to the high school?
Oh, I mean, he coached
Coach.
there. So
Is Mullane still there?
oh, he's there all the time because the basketball gym is
I
right
gotta
next
pay a
to
visit or
the
something,
classroom.
if that's
So
even allowed. I don't
see
know if
him-
that's allowed anymore, but
I would think so, especially
I-
actually now
because
post,
of the
yeah,
because of the school shootings and
Yeah.
stuff like that. People.
'cause I
don't
remember
blame 'em.
being in school. I'm like, oh, this visitor's coming in. I just put a name tag on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It was as simple as
it's
that.
so funny. Yeah, you just open the door and like, oh, I'm here to visit. I graduated such and such years ago. Okay, what's your name here? Here's the name tag. There you go.
Fucking Cleve walking
That's
around
your-
like
yeah.
shit like that when we were in high
That's
school.
your
so, like,
security clearance. There you go.
And now it's like if you're not a student or a teacher and you're on school like grounds, you feel almost wrong. Like
Yeah.
you're like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like it just feels weird. I mean, maybe that's for me, like personally, but yeah, man, I don't know. I think that's definitely the way to go. I think you're right on kind of like the money there because, yeah, just looking back at if you definitely are treated with like more respect, naturally, especially when you're younger, you're gonna want to like give that person the same respect back.
Right.
If they're treating you like a young adult, you're like, oh, this person sees me as a higher, because I'm not being talked down to. They must see me as an equal. Okay, well, if they see me as an equal, I'm probably gonna see them as an equal. But why would you be disrespectful to an equal of you? You get what I'm saying?
100%.
So I think you're definitely right. After like, yeah, for sure. I wonder. I've thought about this a lot, actually. I don't know if this is like weird for you to say or hear, but I've thought often of what it would be like to be one of your students. Because you as a fucking friend, the teacher, Tom, like, you be like, the way you break down information, even through that group chat, like last week, is real. It's just like, it's very well put. It's very easily digestible, but then also you're super fun because like you like organizing like the games that our friend group does and stuff like that. So I'm like, man, what the fuck would it have been like if I was like in this dude's class in high school or something?
It's a work in progress. Like,
I think it's gonna be. I think the kids that are under your tutelage are very lucky, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. I love it. It's a very rewarding job.
And how'd you? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no,
you,
you're good.
I'm like, I still want to like harp back on this. So like you were at a previous school. Now you're at a better school that is obviously more just a better environment.
The best school, and I could say that 10 out of 10 days. Like I love working there, and it doesn't even feel like work.
But it's public, and the other one was public. So how, like, if they're both public schools, meaning they're backed by the government,
Right.
and regulated by the government, how the fuck is it possible that two schools that are both public in the same state, in the same city, could be so different? How is that possible?
Different city. One was up here in Rockland. The other one is, but where I currently work is in New York City.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know that.
School policy. I mean, school policy could be all over the place. I mean, there are schools that have in New York State, not far from here, that have completely like open campuses where students, if they have a study hall, they're able to walk off the campus, drive home. There are some schools like our school where they have to stay on campus the entire day. They can't go out for lunch. So school policies can really range from being, very authoritarian to then very laissez-faire and relaxed. I think, and that's why, like, the argument is like you want to put school policy into the hands of the schools and the communities and the parents, because then it would reflect like the broader ideas and the town philosophy a little bit better, if that makes sense, as opposed to like just a one size fits all approach. But I think it's, like I said, and back to our conversation earlier, like it definitely is a lot easier to enact stricter policy, maybe where there are more needs or less parental involvement within the school community.
So that's where like a Department of Education would be useful.
Yeah, at the state level, yes, and then at the federal level, that's a whole separate beast.
Yeah, could you just break it down for me though? Because I don't understand how, like, okay, so I guess I'll put it very frankly. Like, I don't get how by him, I'm talking about Trump and his policies, right? So we're gonna talk about this because I've never openly like talked about politics, I guess, before on here, and I'm not trying to like.
Lucky me.
It's me. It's me. It's all on me. This is not this. None of this represents Tom's ideologies and opinions, but like, obviously, right now, like Trump is getting mixed reactions to him saying a lot of stuff, but specifically right now, we're zeroing in on the topic of education, and he wants to decentralize the education system in this country and give the power back to the states.
Right.
So me, as a person who's not involved intimately with that space, I look at that and I'm like, well, okay, that makes sense. But if you're saying that there could be so much variation between like schools in even the same state, it's all dependent on like that individual school's policies. What exactly would he be doing? Because it kind of seems like the schools in the states already have their own power if they're able to have that varying of policy.
90% of school funding, or even more in some cases, or just school policy and decision making, if not even more, is coming from the state level. So the idea is that the Department of Education, which I think employed at its peak like 4,500 people in it, and I believe it was constructed in the 1970s. Their budget has superseded and eclipsed the budget of the federal government. As far as like each year, it's going up a much steeper percentage. And I think where people like Trump is viewing this is as that it's a tax burden. You're employing 4,500 people that are unelected. We don't really know who they are, and therefore they're not really needed, just based off the idea that really since the beginning of time, and it's kind of been a shift more in like the 21st century, but for the most part, education is done at the state and local level. So just, do you know how many people he's fired in the last month?
I did
So
hear there was like
4,500.
is peak.
That was pre Trump administration.
Pre-Trump administration.
4,500 employees
of the Department of Education. Yeah. Is this the same buildings that he's talking about in Washington, or that are just unoccupied, like empty? And this is pre him firing people, allegedly?
Yeah, so right now, do you know how many employees there are currently to this day?
I mean, you said a lot. So if it's 4,500, if you cut a company, or I'm just assuming like it's a company, in half, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah, half. Yeah. So you didn't
half?
know? Yeah, it was
no,
half,
I didn't know it was half. I'm just saying if you were to cut it in half.
It's about 2,000 now, so a little bit more than half. But with the idea of like, hey, we're going to continue to do this and chop. My question and my wondering is like, how is that going to affect federal aid and federal funding? Because that is my concern when I first read the story, is especially in this area, there are a lot of schools that rely heavily on federal funds. And what they're saying is that getting rid of the Department of Education will not influence or affect federal funds. But I do think that sometimes states or local municipalities abuse power, and there is corruption on the state and local level. And my philosophy in general is that there are checks, and if the state level is abusing their powers and there's a school district that is underfunded, or that some of the tax-paying funding dollars is being diverted into other areas that it should not, and that taxpayer dollar is not being used for its intended purpose, which is schools, I would like to think that there's a federal agency that is then going to check them, intervene, and either, prosecute them at the state level, or then jump in and give that school some more federal funding. Again, I don't know how that's going to affect it. What I've read is that it shouldn't affect that or student loans. But I also know like this might just be phase one, and then the next phase is going to be like, all right, like at the end of the day, it's like everything's going to be funded by the states and local governments. So you never know where this is going to progress.
So the problem is, kind of from my understanding from what you're saying, is like 90% of the decisions are already made on the state level. Now you're employing like a bunch of people to basically, you have bloat of employee count, because now you have a shit ton of people that are responsible or like are really only impacting 10% of decisions. Maybe some really important ones like funding is part of that 10%, but it's still 10% of, I guess, the problem solving when it comes to education. But it's way too, there's bloat. It's like way too many people involved in this thing. Is that the problem that he's trying to combat?
I think so. And just right now the target is the Department of Education. There's so many other government agencies. I think that's just like
Well, I know Doge is like starting to look into everything.
Right. Like that's so. Right. That's like the theme of this term is like just getting rid of all the government, what they call bureaucrats, unelected officials that have been there. Like I know another argument is that
it's a businessman thing. He's just right sizing the company that is the federal government.
And
that's what he's
like a lot of, I think I don't have the percentage. 70 or 80% of the federal funding for education goes towards higher education, goes toward colleges and universities.
70 or 80%, you said?
Most of it. The vast majority of it goes towards colleges,
which are,
as opposed to universal pre-K or kindergarten, elementary school, or secondary school. So most of it is going to your universities and your colleges, which
they've all been indoctrinated into a certain system. So.
you can certainly make that argument, and then I also think too that we have a college issue in this country. College has become unaffordable, and it's way too much for the average person. And I also think that we should be discouraging people from going to college, depending on the type of student, the type of person they are.
Okay, that's super interesting. What do you mean by that?
So
do you mean like
I'll give you a great example.
trades workers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a student that, I'm not going to say when just to protect the student, but at some point in my teaching career, I had a student that read about 5 or 6 grades lower reading level than what the actual grade they were in. Really good person, tried so hard, they just were not a student. They had a severe learning disability. And it was worrisome and very upsetting to see. And it was one of the things where other teachers, students were well aware of it and tried offering the most amount of support you could possibly imagine for this student. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't happening. But that student, that same student, I went in one day and I was like, oh, my car is like not working. And I'm talking to another teacher. I'm like, it's not working the right way. It's kind of rumbling a bit, blah, blah, blah. And the student overhears me and goes, Mister, here's what I think it is. Blah, 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 blah. It's underneath this part. And I don't know anything about cars, so I can't even say what he said because
it's foreign language.
Goes way over my head. And I was like, wait a second. I'm like, okay. I dropped it off across the street to the mechanic. After school, can you come across the street and just, I know you have a good relationship with them because apparently you work very well with cars, and you know the guys across the street. Can you just make sure what they are saying is accurate and then just ask the questions that you would as if it was your car? He goes, absolutely. So we go across the street, has a conversation. Are you sure it's this problem? Because the way that he was explaining it, it could also be this problem. Did you check this? Yes, we did check that. Okay, great. He's looking at the pricing for everything. Wait, why is a labor cost this much? It should be a lot lower. So, yes, so I'm like, okay. So this student reads at a first grade reading level,
but
then has the mental capacity and the intelligence to look at the billing, and it's a very intense spreadsheet looking sheet that I'm like, I read it and I'm like, I can kind of understand some things and other things go way over my head. And he's able to break it down and then decipher that's BS and okay, this is good work. So help me out, ask the questions that I should have asked, and they kind of set me up nice. And at that moment, I was like, wow, he should never step foot on a college campus because it's not going to do any good at all. But he has great interpersonal skills. He's very funny. He's hardworking. He's driven. He should co-partner with someone who might be a little bit more tech savvy or math savvy, or maybe they have better writing skills, and he could open up his own shop. And he would be very successful because he takes pride in the auto work that he does.
And he just has a natural knack. Like a God-given ability to understand mechanical things like cars and shit like that.
And guess what? I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and I've been going to school for a while, and I still don't understand.
I have a bachelor's degree. I can't do any of that shit.
Right,
I don't know anything about cars.
Right.
And for him to just have that knack, that's very impressive.
As a young man. So and that's when I realized that
wow.
At some point we had to stop celebrating 100% of our schools going to college. Hey, if 100% of them could go to college and they can afford it and it's the right next step for them, that should be celebrated. But there is a major issue that we're just passing along students and telling them, oh, yeah, you should go to school. Hey, yeah, which college are you going to? Right? You never ask someone that's graduating, oh, where are you working next? Or what trade school what trade are you looking to learn? It's always, what school are you going to next?
The assumption is always that college is the next best.
And I think that is a problem that we've created, with just the current educational system.
That is a really interesting perspective. I did not see, you could even tell by my reaction when you first said that. It's like, what the fuck? It sounds so jarring because you're like, what? why do you not want people to go to college? It's kind of saying like, oh yeah, I don't think everyone should like basically educate themselves. That's what it kind of sounds like you're saying, but that's obviously not what you're saying. When you give that example and I'm like, oh shit, clearly I can see that college would not be beneficial for that individual. That guy should be, like you said, going to trade school, getting a license, becoming a mechanic, becoming a plumber, whatever it is. An honest work, like a line of work like that doesn't require you to be a good student in the conventional sense, like a bookworm or whatever it may be. This is crazy you're talking about this because do you know, I would assume you know Mike Rowe?
Of course, yeah.
Do you know about his foundation?
I do not know.
Okay, so this is really interesting because it's funny that we talked about this, but basically, obviously, like he is, you know him from Dirty Jobs, right?
Of course, yeah.
I grew up watching that show, which is why I like Mike Rowe. But I was watching like a podcast with him recently, and apparently for years, he's been very intimately involved with like the tradesman space, right? Obviously, because of Dirty Jobs, that's very like utilities work like that. I don't know what the proper way to describe it, but like construction, maintenance, mechanics, like that, the backbone.
Blue collar
is the way to put it. Blue collar work. So he is very intimately tied to that space, even though he himself is obviously, he's like a fucking Hollywood guy. He's not a blue collar, like he's not a mechanic, but he's very closely tied with that. And through that, he's gotten to know a lot of people and like basically educate himself on this like kind of, I guess, subculture of America, like these blue collar workers, these tradesmen. And he also identified the same issue that you're talking about right now. So he goes and opens up a fucking foundation or something like that. And it's basically like he has a lot of money in this foundation. And the whole purpose of it is basically to identify the future generations of tradesmen or tradesmiths. I don't know what the proper term is, but the whole point of it is basically to fund any individual that doesn't want to go to university and wants to pursue getting a license in whatever field, but doesn't have the financial means to do so. They can apply to that foundation. They do a background check, whatever the fuck, interview, whatever. And if they get accepted, hey, Tom, you want to be a plumber? Okay, great. Come, let's talk, blah, blah, blah. You get passed, approved. Guess what? We're going to pay for your plumber licensing. So, like, go to fucking school, and it's on us. And he's doing that because he's not only identified the fact that, you're talking about it where universities, from the perspective that universities might not be a good suit for a lot of people, which is a very valid point. But he's also coming from it from the perspective of, these are essential jobs that if this trend that you're talking about, promoting college, that's the only next viable step after high school. Because that's kind of what it seems like. With that, you draw that out down the line, you're going to have nowhere near the amount of fucking people you need doing certain jobs in order to literally just sustain the lifestyle, the culture, America.
Absolutely.
You don't have fucking plumbers. What are you going to do if your toilet breaks? You're shit out of luck, literally.
Literally. And that's always bothered me too, is that tied into that. It's like this haves and the have-nots. Like, oh, you either have a college degree and you're very intelligent and you're well educated and you're going to be well off and you're going to be riding into the sunset, or you're going to work right after high school and you're going to get stuck with a minimum wage job and you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck for the rest of your life. Like that is not true at all. And it's also not true where you can go into the workforce for a couple years. You're going to make money. You're not going to lose money, right? So like if you could present someone two options, go into the workforce for 2 years, make some money, save a bit, and then decide, you know what, maybe I'm ready for college. Well, guess what? Now you're going to have the means to go to community college, pay for a semester, test the waters, probably might even still be able to work a part-time job and make money. And then you can make a better and well-informed decision of, do I continue going to college or do I stop? Or do you tell a kid, hey, you know what? Go to that $60,000 a year university. It might not be for you. And if it's not, well, then you could work afterwards. Well, guess what? Now you're $60,000 in debt in the hole with interest. And now that student is screwed.
And
right?
That's the one type of debt that you cannot write off in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Student loans, student debt is the one type of debt in this country you can't, declaring bankruptcy doesn't fucking like omit you of paying those bills. I can't. Oh my God. Yeah. And I think it starts at a culture level, to be honest with you, because that whole thing of have and have nots that you just said, that's a really good point. That's a really good point because it actually, one of Hannah's friends, his name is Oscar. He graduated from medical school. Now he's going into residency. I think that's the way that works.
And that is a job,
of course,
that needs education. I'm like, that's us. Yeah. Yes.
But he has kind of like a similar shared thing with this like have and have nots perspective, where it's like basically I was coming at it where I was like, I was talking to him one day, and he's a really, really like, he has a very naturally pondering mind. Like he thinks a lot. He has a lot of like reasonable and like good things to say. Like he's very just interesting to pick his brain and just have a conversation with him. I think you'd like him a lot. But besides that, we were talking one day, just shooting the shit about whatever. And this whole topic of like college comes up in medical school, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like somehow or another it got into like the topic of like intelligence. And I was like, yeah, you're so smart because like you're in medical school. And he was like, I don't like you saying that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like he seemed like weirdly like taken aback by that. And I'm like, why? You're fucking going to medical school. Like you're smart. He's like, I don't think intelligence just because you're going to like a certain, you know, if you go to this school over this school that you must be smarter because you're going to X school over Y school, or even on a greater level that you went to school at all. He literally said in that conversation, I have met
Oscar. That's a great point.
He literally said, I have met
point.
so many people just in life, everyday life, and he loves talking to people, like picking their, like a stranger. He's like you in this way where it's like he could talk to any fucking person on the block and have like a deep conversation.
Get you in some trouble, though, I will say that.
Definitely, but it's definitely a useful skill, right? So he has that skill, and he says that he has met so many people just conversing that he's like, you could just get a sense. He's like, this person is way smarter than the fucking idiots that I'm going to medical school with right now. And those people are they're going to be doctors, or at least they're pursuing that, right? So you would think that, for them to even be in medical school,
yeah, it's
like,
a Mensa,
they're so smart.
It's a Mensa meeting. Yeah, you only have the top 1% of IQ. Yeah, it's true. Like IQ is certainly not measured that, or intelligence. I mean, whenever we think of intelligence, we always just think of academic intelligence. We don't ever talk about like social intelligence. Like
And emotional intelligence, physical, spatial. He opened my eyes about. He cracked. This was a really crazy conversation, because in that same conversation, he said like the whole thing about like, yeah, like there's a lot of idiots that I go to that are in there's a lot of idiots that I know that go to medical school. Just because you're receiving a certain level of education doesn't mean shit about your intelligence. He also took it a step further, because I brought up the IQ thing, and apparently IQ is bullshit. Like that rating, that metric. Do you know about this?
I've heard. I mean, I've heard that like there is an issue with the actual testing practice itself, and like just there is implicit bias.
It's
with
like
the actual
the way he explained it to me
the way
was
to assess it.
Yeah, so the way he explained it to me wasn't so much that the questions were. He didn't say that those weren't problems, but he said that from a like logic perspective, it just doesn't work, because IQ is essentially a measure of perceived intelligence at a given age. So if you're 10, you should have the intelligence of a 10-year-old. But if you have the intelligence of a 15-year-old and you're 10, your IQ is higher. But all that's bullshit, because he was basically arguing, and a lot of like modern day academics are saying like, you could go through a lot of stuff at an early age that's going to accelerate your education, and therefore you have a perceived or bloated IQ. But then the second you reach adulthood, maybe your brain capacity is like capped off at a certain age, right? And then at that point, also, like the older you get, at a certain point, like if you just stop pursuing learning new things or whatever, your intelligence is gonna stay at a certain level, but your age is always gonna be increasing. So essentially, what that does, if I'm remembering correctly,
right, it's a proportion. Like
it represents a lower IQ,
right?
So it's all shit. Like it's not like that's not a smart way to measure intelligence. But what he offered instead of like a new way of thinking is that whole thing that you're talking about. There's academic intelligence. There's like spatial intelligence, which is what athletes like yourself usually rank much higher on, is like spatial intelligence. That's why you're really good at moving in through space, through your environment, and shooting a ball into that all requires very, very high level of spatial intelligence.
Right. And I've always found it very interesting too that one of these subgroups you see during any election is college educated versus non-college educated. Like that is like a major
Divide?
Divide. Yeah, there's a correlation. Not all the times, or like maybe not a correlation, but there's sometimes I guess it's correlated with the candidate that's running, and you can make some sort of analysis off of that. But I never understood the point of it, right? Hey, what is the reason why we care whether or not someone studied an extra 4 years or went to a trade school? Does that mean because you went to college you're going to make more informed, better decisions for yourself, your family, your community members? Probably not. I would, and I understand probably what the counter argument is that during higher education you develop problem solving skills and higher level order thinking. Like I understand that, but I also think that, as you said and as Oscar said, like just because you go to a fancy institution doesn't mean
You're smart.
well informed in everything.
No,
you might just
definitely
be
no way.
a medical expert. And there are a lot of medical experts that you might have a conversation with that they have no idea, or they're very limited or have limited skills or expertise on writing or linguistics or phonics, right? So, and that seems like how most people's brain works is you have strengths in one thing and then you have weaknesses
100%.
and other things.
Yeah.
So I want to end it with one thing.
Go ahead.
March 27th, 2026. Do I have a verbal?
Oh, is this your wedding?
This is the wedding. Do
Yeah.
I have a verbal yes that you will be there?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Hannah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm hoping that our next podcast will be before that, and then I would like to kind of talk about like the planning a wedding. Even though I'm a very passive in this role, I would say.
So, are you guys in the planning stage right now already?
We is a strong word, but
So Emma.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Emma's pulling fucking hairs out right now.
Emma's doing a nice job. Financially it's we. Brain power, it's her, for sure.
I feel like that's the way it always works too.
But
Because guys don't
it's
give a fuck
gonna be
about.
a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. But with your blessing, next time I'm on here, I'm hoping that I'll be either maybe we'll be depending. Hopefully it won't be that long, but maybe we'll be talking about like the wedding itself or the final stages of the
Bro, you don't need my
process.
blessing. We'll get
So-
you on here. You could be on here whenever you want. You know that. So
Well, best podcast there is around. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. I do, because I have that long 45, 50-minute commute. Charles with Chung. And I have to say, like, one thing that you do such a great job is there's been such a wide range of topics and conversations. Do you do your homework before? No?
it depends on the conversation. Like for this, I looked up a little bit of stuff in terms of like, how is the Department of Education structured? And it's funny that you mentioned it earlier, but I actually use ChatGPT for a lot of this. Like I was like, in layman's terms, explain what the Department of Education is in charge of.
Yeah.
Like what do they run? And then it gives me like a brief synopsis. I read a little bit about that. A topic that we didn't get to, which is actually, it's funny because this is why we're drinking Guinness. St. Patrick's Day is obviously next Monday.
Oh, yeah.
We were supposed to talk about that, but it's fine. We'll do that another time. But I was looking into that because I was actually super fascinated by
One
that.
little fact. Do you know where he was born?
He is not Irish.
Yep.
He is British Roman.
Yep. Very good.
Okay, right?
Yep.
So he was born in the British Isles during the time of Roman rule, right?
Yep. And he was captured, brought to Ireland.
To work as I don't want to say a slave, but
Indentured servitude.
yeah,
Yes.
it's a little bit muddy
Kinda,
water.
yeah, yeah. So-
Different term, not as
Right.
bad as slave. but
Brought
yeah.
back then, or went back to England for a few years. And I think he was not born as Patch. He changed his name.
Oh, that I didn't
Yeah,
see.
to like
That I didn't-
Patrice or Patrick. Then moved back to Ireland, and then that's when
What I thought was
the
really
same.
cool.
because he removed all the snakes from Ireland.
Yeah. So okay. So this is fun. Do you know what that means? Like what that expression means?
What expression? Like,
Removing the snakes.
no, I like.
Did you think and I'm not judging you for this
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know anything about this. It's gonna sound like I might be judging you the way I'm wording the question, but like, did you think that that expression, that phrase, literally meant removing snakes?
Well, I thought it was more used as like a metaphor.
So
I know
a metaphor for what? That's what I'm asking.
I would imagine like removing like the negative, not negativity, but there was some no, just inform me because I don't even want to make a wrong prediction.
It was paganism, bro.
Okay, yes, okay.
So like apparently there was like a huge pagan culture in Ireland,
Yeah.
in the mainland, and like the removing snakes. Because it's funny, the video I was watching about this, I was like, "There's no fucking snakes in Ireland. Like, what is this removing snake shit?" And apparently the snakes that they were removing was just the pagan culture, like pagan practices,
religion,
yeah. So he ended up going through and converting basically a large sum of the population back then. And then like after his death,
okay.
200 years later, it was like 99% of Ireland was at that point Christian.
Yep.
So that's why he was super celebrated.
First St. Patrick's Day celebration, not parade, but celebration.
17,
Before that, actually,
16.
1600s,
Do you know where the first parade was thrown?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Not well, I can't say no, like I'm an expert, but from what I read, no, it was St. Augustine.
Okay, so that's where the first celebration was, but I don't think it was really a parade though. Maybe it was a parade.
But
I don't know.
So the first, so on one thing we could agree on is that the first of something, whether it be parade or celebration,
Was
was
St.
not
Augustine.
in Ireland.
So no. Well, they had St. Patrick's Day, and like each year they would celebrate the day by just wearing like a little shamrock on their shirt. To what I heard, they would have off. They would go to mass. They would eat like a family dinner, like a special meal, and that was it. There was no like celebration. And actually, I think up until the 1970s, do you know alcohol was actually banned on St. Patrick's Day in Ireland?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Well, I know that it was originally made a holiday in 1904, like really, early 1900s, which for us is a really long time ago, but St. Patrick's was in like the 1600s, 1700s, right? In terms of the popularity of that day and that.
Yeah,
like,
it became very popular, I think, after I want to say 1840s, which was like the Great Famine, the Irish Potato Famine. That was like the huge wave of Irish immigrants coming to New York City, to Boston, Chicago, and then that's when like that just dinner became then a much larger celebration, and then eventually a parade.
I heard something funny about the reason that modern day St. Patrick Day celebrations have become synonymous with like just binge drinking is like, so it's funny that you mentioned the thing about alcohol being banned up until the 70s, but I had heard that like since its inception as like a day of celebration, they wouldn't really celebrate it. It was just like a dinner, like what you were saying, but it eventually became that because St. Patrick's Day finds itself smack in like basically the middle of Lent, which is this period of abstinence, of like abstaining from drinking alcohol and like eating meat and all this stuff. So people, the theory is that people got so pent up of having this really prolonged period of time of like being strict and disciplined, basically, that they like found an excuse on St. Patrick's Day to eat meat, the traditional Irish bacon with what's the other
Corned beef and cabbage.
Corned beef and cabbage,
Which is that's like an American way of celebrating. Like, believe it or not, corned beef and cabbage, that was not really popular at all in Ireland.
what?
Yeah.
Okay, you see, this is how crazy it is. If you actually look at it from like a historical timeline, the U.S. and Ireland have so much impact on each other's cultures, because Irish people from Ireland did different shit from Irish people, like Irish Americans, and then like there would be an exchanging of ideas, and then now people wear green. That started here. That didn't start over there.
No, right. Yep.
You know, and like I also found out the shit about the fucking the 3-leaf clover, that the reason that was prominent was because St. Patrick used to go around using that as the shamrock as an explanation for the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, exactly.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
Which I didn't know that. I thought that was super cool. But then I I was shown through the video and like other sources that later on the fucking 4-leaf clover becomes a symbol of like good luck, because basically, long story short, the church edited like the symbolism of the 4-leaf clover to represent like the three things that the petals represented, and then the last petal was luck or God's grace. So they like changed it from like, 3 is a lucky number, which it was in Irish culture because of paganism. It eventually made its way into 4 because of like the church trying to be like, that's an old pagan idea. Like 3 is a lucky number.
Yeah,
we don't want to
associate.
We don't want to associate it with that. 4-leaf clover, that's really lucky, and the reason why is because of X, Y, and Z, and also God's grace, luck. That's the 4th clover. So like, and then that's why now the 4-leaf clover is lucky. So I don't know. It's super.
That's funny. You know the St. Augustine fact, because I thought like, I feel like most people haven't said like Boston or New York, but it was St. Augustine, and that was still when it was
under Spanish
rule. Yep.
Yeah,
Spanish Catholic rule. Exactly.
Which I was so confused by that, because why would Spain care about Irish people back then? What was the reason behind that?
I don't know. I mean,
there was a reason.
There's probably just one Irish guy that found his way over there. He's like, we gotta fucking celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, Irish people are a good time, bro. So they definitely like.
Someone said something that made so much sense. It was like Irish people are like the Latin Americans of Europe.
Okay, I'm gonna expose myself a little bit. This is the last thing, and then we'll end it, because I've kept you here hostage for almost 2 hours.
Definitely
now.
not hostage.
as you know, like being from this town and not being Irish, I had a certain experience growing up that maybe might have made me not be the most fond of
Yes,
Irish people.
Completely get it.
When I was younger, and like in college, and then now like that I don't want to say, like now that I'm in my mid-20s, I like look back and I'm like, yo, why do I fuck with Irish people so much nowadays? And I realized like that whole jovial culture, like the joy, the jokes, like the banter, all that shit is in common with like all the other minority groups in America. And I'm like, why is that? And then I found out that from an Irish person, I can't remember who it was. I feel bad. It was like in college or something. They were like, well, Ireland was just considered like the dirty whites of Europe, like England or like these proper motherfuckers. And then Ireland's like, oh, what was the religious differences?
Well,
that was like the big thing, right? Is Protestants versus Catholics?
Exactly. Like
right?
in Northern Ireland.
I don't want to fuck this up. Can you explain it?
Yes. So just absolutely right. Like the divide between Protestant and Catholics within Western Europe. But then to kind of just allude to that, in Northern Ireland, you're Irish if you're Catholic, and then if someone's Protestant, they would probably consider themselves British and align themselves to the crown. Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Is that level to this current day?
Yes.
Oh shit.
So I do want to go visit at some point, but I hear it's still hostile. But
towards
towards the idea that
Protestant,
right? Like the Protestants and the Catholics, they still are segregated and live in their own community. There is intermixing, but what I've heard and what I've been told is that like it's you have your Irish Catholic neighborhoods, and then you have like your Irish Protestant or like your more traditionally British neighborhoods. And some places will fly the Union Jack, and other places will fly the Irish flag. So it's always like this constant like back and forth. Because when you're in like Southern Ireland, you see Irish flags every once in a while. It's not like here where like people are like really patriotic, nationalistic, however you want to spin it. But then as soon as, and this is what I've heard, so that as soon as you go into the north, it's like everyone's flying one of the other flags just to kind of drown out the other side.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Oh, that's it. And it's probably not even a fraction of how intense it was back
years
in
ago.
The 1970s, 1980s with the IRA.
So on that note, basically, I found out that Irish people were considered to be like, I guess, lower class than like the proper Brits or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, and when they first came here, they were discriminated against. They were indentured servants in the early 1600s, early 1700s, or late 1600s, early 1700s when they first came over here. And I think, everyone always says like, oh, culture is always based off of like drinking, family, food, and friends, right? But I really do think like just being a little bit more in touch with like Irish culture now that, my fiance Emma's Irish and just kind of like, and it's funny, like growing up here, I wouldn't say I resented my Irish side, but I was like, oh, like everyone's Irish and like everyone acts a certain way. Like I don't want to, I kind of want to just do my own thing.
Yeah.
But then like over the years, like, I started wearing the patty cap and started like doing some research on St. Patrick or just Ireland in general, and I have a desire to go back and like learn about like my family lineage. But you definitely see like a ton of parallels between like Irish culture and just like Latin American culture in general. It's really funny.
Irish people are a good time, man. I've really grown to like completely realize how much of a fool I was for having these stupid preconceived notions.
And there's a huge difference between an Irish American and actually like someone from Ireland. The same way there's a big difference like an Italian American. Like if you go to Italy, they'd be like, these people are they're not the real Italian.
Yeah.
It's such a disgrace to Sicily, whatever. Like they would completely differentiate themselves from the. I guess America just makes cultures worse.
Yeah, I guess it like waters it the fuck down,
douchier.
And then it's like through watering it down, only the most fucking douchiest, worst people rise to the top,
exactly.
And then they just become the poster child for that fucking subculture. That's crazy.
But hey,
thanks for having me on, man. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to have this genuine, authentic conversation.
I said thank you for having me on.
Oh, I did that.
Thank you for coming on.
I did that much talking. I knew it was. I enjoyed it. It's funny, like coming in, I'm like, crap. I feel like I'm gonna run out of things to like talk about, and Never happens.
No, 'cause we're
talking
bros.
for oh my god.
Yeah, it's 2 hours because we're fucking friends. That's
Yeah.
why. Because we just have that chemistry. We don't gotta force nothing, man.
Conversationalist. So
Likewise, dude. Thank you for coming in, man. Of
course.
Thank you. Listen, you know the outro. Just snap and point up when I give you the cue.
snap and point
Snap and point up.
up. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
usually on Spotify, so I don't see that.
Yeah. No, I know. It's the non-video. The non-video always kills me. But actually, I just signed up for a thing where it lets me upload video now. So
I always
the
opt
past
in- Yes,
for audio only.
yeah.
The streaming, the bandwidth. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
takes way longer to
you
load
know,
the
you know.
episode. Yeah. But thank you guys. If you made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much for watching, following, subscribing, all that social media bullshit. Until next time, I will see y'all later. Tom, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Cue the outro music. There you go. There you go. And until next time, deuces, y'all.